So, Fran, I'll let you moderate with as many questions as you want to take. I know it's hot in here. Forgive us. We weren't expecting the heat
Talk about
wave.
global warming. I mean, yeah. It's beautiful, though. We've enjoyed being in New York this week. Thank you for your hospitality. Are there any questions? Yes, in the back.
My name is Lois Epstein, and I live in Anchorage, and I do some energy consulting. And I am here on vacation, so this was good timing. Anyway, I thought I was a bit surprised and somewhat think it might have been an oversight that none of the panelists mentioned renewable energy potential in Alaska, where we really do have some of the best potential for just about everything but solar. And with some money spent for research in terms of being able to transport and store and transport that energy to the lower 48, we could potentially have a whole new industry in place in the not too far future, or alternatively, for energy intensive industries locating in Alaska because of our geothermal, tidal, small scale hydro, and wave potential. So maybe those who are familiar with that.
I would simply say you're absolutely right that there's a tremendous amount of wind and tidal and geothermal, and it turns out that Syria is actually developing a wind farm. So maybe Margie would just like to talk briefly about that.
Well, yes, I actually agree with you that Alaska could show the rest of the United States a lot about alternative and renewable energy if we had sort of the vision to do it. Now, Syria is putting its toe in the water. We are in the process of developing the first commercial-sized wind farm that will go into the rail belt grid, which is, of course, where Anchorage is. There are other successful, smaller farms that have been put out in the rural communities, Kodiak and Kotzebue for one. But to have a significant contribution of wind into the rail belt has not been achieved yet. So we're very excited and look for being able to produce power and deliver power into the Anchorage area by 2011. We also are looking at small-scale hydro, and we are about to announce, although we're not prepared to do it just this moment, and actually an alternative energy project that may help with the situation of the shortage in gas supply in Cook Inlet. I have myself been writing for years now about the concern for natural gas supply dwindling in Cook Inlet. We have a very interesting situation in Alaska where there's lots of gas on the slope, which Daniel talked about, but it is not connected to where the most of the people live. And so we have a very unusual gas market within the state. And so I think we are looking as fast as we can at alternatives and renewables that would help with that natural gas situation. We're going to look to the state and to help us with incentives to actually bring those kind of projects online. Already the state has stepped up with a $25 million grant to help take power off of Fire Island, so they have been there with us already. So I think we're coming to that point. And the necessity being the mother of invention, we're going to run out of gas in Cook Inlet, and we're going to need something to keep our houses warm and our lights on. And so those of us who are in the business are trying to do that as quickly as we can.
Just had a couple comments. I really appreciate that you brought that up, and it wasn't a part of anybody's presentation, but I was just in Berlin, and in Germany, they're very proud of what they've done in terms of solar and in terms of wind generation. And we're sort of, in a way, sort of making fun of Americans, and I thought, in a way, making fun of Alaskans at what we're not doing. But by the time we got into the discussion, I realized 50% of their electricity comes from coal in Germany. In Kodiak, where I live, 80% of our electricity comes from hydro, 10% comes from wind, and we're hoping to ramp up both of those to pick up that extra 10%. So Germany should be ashamed at using 50% coal when, in fact, so they're sort of putting a lot more carbon into the atmosphere than we are. So we all have to work on that. I did want to say that there is an issue of some importance that hydro in many parts of the country is not considered renewable. That makes no sense to me. If you can put in hydro and it doesn't damage the fish resource, it doesn't damage the streams, then it seems to me that it should be renewable. And I would like to say that Senator Murkowski has introduced an amendment, I think, to a piece of legislation that would allow Alaska to claim that hydro is in fact renewable. I don't understand why the rest of the country doesn't want to do that. It seems to me it's a perfectly renewable resource. Once you build that hydro plant, as long as you're not damaging anything else, you're producing electricity as inexpensively as possible. Thank you.
Great. Another question. And if you have one, I think there's a microphone right here. Yes, go ahead, please. Please use a mic and tell us your name.
My name is Jim Friedman, and I was just curious. They just did a test drilling of natural gas in Nenana. Do you know if anybody knows the results, whether or not they
I think
struck
Margie
gas?
knows the results of the test drilling in Nenana.
Unfortunately, it was not as successful as Doyon and its partners had hoped. They did find hydrocarbon, but it's not clear at this point whether those finds are economic. So I believe they feel they have tested what they need to test and know so much more now about the basin. But this particular well is likely not to be the salvation that we need for Cook Inlet or for Fairbanks. That's to come, perhaps. It is disappointing, but that's exploration. Wildcat exploration's pretty tough business.